Resistance training can pursue two related but distinct goals: hypertrophy, maximizing muscle size, or powerlifting style strength, maximizing 1 rep max on the squat, bench press, and deadlift. By definition, hypertrophy training targets muscle growth, whereas strength training, like powerlifting, targets raw force production. Both begin with lifting weights, yet the sessions diverge sharply. Hypertrophy-oriented athletes, such as Hussein Farhat, pile up overall training volume, performing many sets and reps with moderate loads across a wide range of compound and isolation movements, chasing a relentless pump and progressive overload to swell muscle fibers. Powerlifters, such as Vladimir Anatoly, on the other hand, zero in on the big 3 lifts, handling very heavy weights for just 1 to 5 reps per set and taking long rests, so every effort drives their 1 RM higher. In short, hypertrophy equals muscle size, powerlifting equals maximal strength. Building on that distinction, the structure and focus of each training style further highlight their unique goals. Hypertrophy training typically involves moderate reps, often in the 6 to 20 plus range, and high volume to maximize muscle fatigue and stimulate growth, whereas powerlifting relies on very low reps, 1 to 5, with heavier loads, and more sets focused on refining maximal strength. The intensity also differs. Hypertrophy routines use moderate loads, around 30 to 80% of 1 rep max, and push most sets near failure, while powerlifters work with very heavy weights, usually over 80 to 85% of 1 RM, but rarely go to failure, prioritizing form and performance. Rest periods reflect this contrast too. Hypertrophy sessions feature shorter rests, 1 to 2 minutes, to sustain metabolic stress, while powerlifting demands longer breaks, 2 to 5 plus minutes, to allow full recovery between heavy sets. Both styles create muscle growth through mechanical tension, but the adaptations differ. Hypertrophy tends to produce more sarcoplasmic expansion, increased muscle fluid content, metabolic stress, and soreness, whereas powerlifting builds strength through neuromuscular adaptations like greater motor unit recruitment, improved coordination, and myofibrillar protein growth. Powerlifting programs are highly specific. If you want to hit big lifts, you must practice those lifts. A powerlifter like Vladimir Anatoly spends most workouts on squats, bench presses, and deadlifts, often with minimal variations. This follows the SAID principle: specific adaptations to imposed demand. You get good at what you train. In contrast, a hypertrophy-focused trainee like Hussein Farhat has the freedom to use any exercise that stresses the target muscle. He might do multiple squat variations, plus leg presses, leg extensions, hamstring curls, etc., and similarly varied chest and arm work to thoroughly fatigue each muscle. Hypertrophy workouts often include many isolation movements, bicep curls, triceps extensions, lateral raises, etc., in addition to compound lifts, whereas a strict powerlifting routine might do only 1 or 2 accessory exercises per session. Powerlifting training typically stays in the 1 to 5 rep range, sometimes up to 8 for volume at very high intensity, about 80 to 100% 1 RM. For example, Vladimir might perform sets like squats, 3 sets of 5 at 85% of 1 RM, bench, 5 sets of 3 at 90%, etc. By contrast, hypertrophy training commonly uses higher reps. Typical bodybuilding prescriptions are around 8 to 12 reps per set at about 70 to 85% 1 RM for beginners, and even 12 to 20 plus reps on many accessory lifts. Barbell medicine recommends that hypertrophy lifters can use a wide range of reps, often 3 to 20 for compound lifts and 6 to 20 plus for isolation exercises, with sets taken closer to failure, RPE 8 to 10. In practice, Hussein Farhat's workout might include 10 reps bench, 12 reps dumbbell flies, 12 reps pec deck, etc., all taken near muscle fatigue, whereas Vladimir spends his energy on a few very heavy sets that improve his neural drive. Hypertrophy programs accumulate much more total volume. Because Hughes-style bodybuilding uses many sets of moderate reps for each muscle, weekly set counts are high. Barbell medicine notes that hypertrophy programming has higher total volume, more sets and reps due to added exercises and rep counts. Strength programs like Vladimir's deliberately use lower volume, If you squatted 9 heavy sets this week, you might squat only 5 heavy sets the next, whereas a bodybuilder might do 15 sets of legs each week. Lower volume in powerlifting helps avoid overtaxing the CNS and joints under maximal loads. On a heavy day, a powerlifter stops each set as soon as the lift breaks, often far from true muscular failure. Research suggests that staying a few reps shy of failure, like RPE 6 to 8, optimizes strength gains. In hypertrophy training, lifters often push closer to failure, especially on isolation moves. The result is that Hussein might feel a deep burn in his muscles as fibers near exhaustion, while Vladimir will usually bail out at technical failure with less grind left in the tank. This matches Eric Bugera's observations. Heavy strength sets reach failure quickly because most muscle fibers are already maxed, whereas high rep sets accumulate more metabolic stress and fiber damage. Because of these differences, many athletes periodize between goals. A common strategy is to do a hypertrophy-based cycle for several weeks or months, then switch to a strength cycle. SoCal powerlifting coaches even use a pyramid analogy. Early in training, focus on building mass and work capacity with a wide base. Then gradually, shift to heavier low-rep strength work at the peak. Similarly, a power building program explicitly blends both goals. It might prioritize squat, bench, deadlift strength, but also include bodybuilding-style accessory work. For instance, Barbell Medicine's power building templates pair heavy main lifts with extra sets for biceps, calves, rear delts, etc. to improve aesthetics alongside strength. The takeaway is that it's possible to train for both, and many lifters do so in cycles or combined workouts. However, most experts agree that specializing yields faster gains. A strength-focused block maximizes 1RM progress, while a hypertrophy block maximizes muscle gain. Physiologically, both hypertrophy and strength training cause muscles to grow, but via slightly different emphases. Hypertrophy training maximizes mechanical tension and metabolic stress in the muscle fiber, which drives muscle protein synthesis and fiber growth. Bodybuilding-style sets create microtrauma and metabolic byproducts, lactate, hydrogen ions, that signal the muscle to enlarge. Powerlifting training also produces mechanical tension, but because the lifts are heavy, much of the early adaptation is neural. Heavy training increases motor unit recruitment and firing rate, meaning your nervous system learns to activate more muscle fibers simultaneously and relax opposing muscles for greater net force. Over time, powerlifting-style training also causes structural changes, some fiber growth, and tendon stiffening, but often with a larger proportion of added contractile protein, such as myofibrillar hypertrophy. Bodybuilding routines often induce more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy fluid and glycogen storage in muscles because of the high-rep pumping style. For example, a MyProtein guide explains that bodybuilders' high-rep workouts tend to increase muscle volume via expanded sarcoplasm, ATP, glycogen, and water without proportionally as much increase in the actual contractile fibers. This makes the muscles look fuller but doesn't directly boost strength. By contrast, heavy strength training yields more myofibrillar growth, adding contractile proteins and thus proportionally increases strength. In practice, a hypertrophy lifter like Hussein may notice his muscles look rounder and feel pumped after workouts, while a powerlifter like Vladimir may add strength even if his pecs or quads don't thicken as quickly. Importantly, muscle size and strength are correlated. Barbend notes that a larger muscle cross-sectional area generally produces more force. In fact, research shows training for size often improves strength thanks to bigger muscles and vice versa. This size-strength synergy means neither approach is futile. Adding mass as in hypertrophy training builds the potential for strength gains, while adding neural efficiency as in strength training doesn't preclude muscles from growing later. Many lifters use this to their advantage. Even powerlifters will include phases of moderate rep work to build a bigger muscle engine. Mass moves mass. Anecdotally and by design, hypertrophy workouts often cause more delayed soreness than maximal lifts. As Bugera explains, heavy sets cause failure when most fibers are fully recruited, so there is actually less opportunity for random fibers to accumulate damage. Light to moderate loads taken to failure, typical in hypertrophy training, let many fibers accumulate fatigue and micro tears, leaving you feeling sore. In our experience, after a high-volume leg day, we often hobble out of the gym, whereas a session of heavy singles may leave the CNS feeling fried, but the muscles only moderately tender. Proper recovery, nutrition, sleep, and deloads are crucial for either style. High-volume hypertrophy blocks require more attention to muscle recovery, nutrition, and active rest due to the damage, whereas high-intensity strength phases require careful CNS recovery, more rest days, and longer warm-ups. Nutrition needs overlap, but with emphasis differences. To gain significant muscle, a calorie surplus and high protein intake are generally advised. For instance, hypertrophy-focused guidelines suggest about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day, and an overall caloric surplus. Strength athletes also need good protein and fuel, but some powerlifters can gain strength even at maintenance calories, especially when first starting, since neural adaptations don't strictly require extra calories. However, most strong lifters still eat in a slight surplus to add lean mass. In practice, top powerlifters outside the super heavyweight classes are often quite muscular and lean. In any case, depriving yourself of nutrients will stall progress. Common training mistakes include not eating enough protein or calories to support the work. Regardless of the goal, technique is paramount. Both hypertrophy and powerlifting training demand correct form to avoid injury and maximize results. Coaches repeatedly warn that neglecting proper form is one of the biggest mistakes in any weight training. For powerlifters, improper squat or deadlift form under maximal loads can end a lift or cause serious injury. For bodybuilders, bad form on a bench press can strain joints without effectively working the target muscle. As one guide states, using improper form can increase the risk of injury and prevent you from effectively targeting the intended muscle groups. In practice, this means starting with lighter weights to master technique for both lifting and isolation movements, and always using a controlled motion. We've personally learned that investing time in perfect form on squats and presses paid dividends later. Improving Vladimir's squat depth and bar path directly translated to heavier lifts. There is no absolute better style. It depends on your goals and preferences. If your goal is pure strength, like you want to win a powerlifting contest or test a new 1RM, a powerlifting-focused program is best. If your goal is muscle size or physique, hypertrophy training is the clear choice. In both cases, integrating the other approach can be beneficial. Many experts advocate a hybrid or phased approach. For example, Barbell Medicine notes that combining heavy and high-rep training yields optimal gains in both size and strength. Likewise, powerlifting coaches emphasize the importance of periodic hypertrophy work to build muscle and work capacity. Mass moves mass. In practical terms, balance both. You can and often should do both types of training. A common strategy is to alternate phases. Spend some weeks on higher volume for muscle and some on higher intensity for strength. This aligns with the power building philosophy. For example, you might devote your off-season to bodybuilding style work, building up muscles and recovery capacity, then switch to a strength peaking phase with mostly heavy triples and singles. Even within a single workout, you can mix heavy lifts early for strength with lighter accessory sets later for hypertrophy. Above all, let your primary goal guide your program and focus on form. If lifting heavy like Vladimir, prioritize compound lifts and ensure your squat, bench, deadlift technique is sound before adding extra volume. If pursuing size like Hussein, prioritize exercises that target your lagging muscles effectively, but still maintain good form and avoid ego lifting. Constantly ask, is this serving my goal? And adjust. As trainers stress, progress comes from consistent overload and safe practice. Experience level, recovery ability, and personal preference matter. Beginners often grow quickly on either program, so choose what you enjoy. As you advance, periodizing and switching focus become more important. What worked as a newbie, like 5x5 strength block, may not suffice for long-term hypertrophy, and vice versa. Yes, it's entirely possible to gain both size and strength, but you must plan accordingly. A balanced or periodized approach tends to work best, rather than rigidly sticking to one mode. Keep your focus aligned with your goals and always prioritize sound technique and progressive overload. Speaking from my own experience, I've tried both sides of the spectrum. Early on, I trained much like Hussein Farhat, lots of volume, moderate weights, and chasing the pump. I loved the feeling of full muscles and saw steady gains in size and moderate strength gains too. However, as I got stronger, I switched to a heavier focus, more like Vladimir Anatoly, doing heavy bench singles and squat doubles. I was surprised by how much my strength shot up, but I also noticed my muscles didn't always feel as pumped on those days. High volume workouts left me sore, but excited by how big I felt, while heavy low volume days made me feel powerful, but more focused on technique and less sore in the muscles. Over time, I learned to blend the two. For example, I might structure a week where I squat heavy on Monday, low reps, focus on form and depth, and do higher rep leg accessories on Thursday for quad hypertrophy. On bench days, I'll hit a heavy double or triple, then finish with some mid-range sets or dumbbell work for chest. This way, I get the best of both: nervous system adaptation from the heavy lifts and muscle pump and stimulation from the higher rep work. I also noticed that during my pure hypertrophy phases, I could handle a lot of volume and my work capacity skyrocketed. I felt like I could never get enough sets in. That matches what strength coaches say. Doing more hypertrophy builds your ability to recover from training more volume later. Conversely, doing pure strength phases, I felt my lifts becoming more technical and heavier. But if I hadn't spent time on size earlier, I felt there was less muscle reserve to work with. If you want to achieve a Greek god physique naturally, make sure you watch this video where I rank the best and worst exercises for muscle building.